Diving right in whenever someone mentions the Old Testament, I always wonder, what exactly counts as the Old Testament Bible? Is it the same for everyone, or does it vary?
That's actually a great place to start. The Old Testament is basically the first big section of the Christian Bible, but its roots are much older. It's essentially the Hebrew Scriptures. For many Jewish people, it's called the Tanakh. But for Christians, the books and even the order can shift a bit depending on traditions.
So, when someone says Old Testament, are they referencing the same collection of stories and laws, whether they're Catholic, Protestant, or Jewish?
Not always. For example, the Catholic Old Testament includes a few books like Tobit and Judith that Protestants typically don't recognize. The core stories like Genesis and Exodus are there in all versions, but the details really do shift depending on your tradition.
That difference is wild. I didn't realize the lineup could change so much. But what are some of the big themes or ideas that pop out from the Old Testament, regardless of version?
One huge thread is the idea of covenant. Think of it as a deep promise or agreement between God and people. There's also a ton about justice, mercy, and how communities should treat each other. Stories like Moses freeing the Israelites or the wisdom in Proverbs really set the scene for what faith looked like back then.
I've noticed people sometimes quote the Ten Commandments or those epic stories about King David. Are those the main action moments believers look to, or is there more to it?
Honestly, there's so much more. The poetry of the Psalms, the wild visions of prophets like Isaiah, or even the gritty details of daily life in Leviticus, it all shapes how believers understand God, community, and themselves.
Switching gears a bit, I'm curious. When does someone actually draw on the Old Testament to put their faith into action? Is it during tough situations, or more for learning and inspiration?
It really depends, but a lot of people turn to these texts when they're searching for guidance or wrestling with big questions. For example, someone facing injustice might find encouragement in the story of Moses standing up to Pharaoh. Or during grief, the Psalms become this source of honest emotion and hope.
That makes sense sometimes. Those ancient stories almost feel like they mirror what's happening today. Do you think people also use the Old Testament as a kind of rule book? Or is it more about values and big picture lessons?
There's definitely a mix. While a lot of the specific laws aren't followed literally anymore, like dietary rules, those core values, like caring for the vulnerable or practicing forgiveness, still shape how people live out their faith.
That actually reminds me of how often the Old Testament gets referenced even outside of church, like in movies or everyday sayings. Why do you think it still sticks around in modern culture?
It's wild, but those stories and phrases like an eye for an eye or the promised land have kind of woven themselves into the way we talk about life and justice. Even people who've never read the